Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second instalment of IFPRI's AI for Food Systems Research webinar series. My name is Elliot Jones-Garcia. I'm a senior research analyst here at IFPRI and the lead for this initiative. Thank you all for joining us today. And a special thanks to my co-curator, Yona Rapishti of Digital Green, for organising today's speakers. We're kicking off a timely conversation on organisational journeys in human-centred AI, how institutions are navigating the integration of AI tools in ways that are responsible, inclusive, and grounded in development practice. We'll begin with Joyce Wong of Digital Green, who will be sharing insights from their organisational onboarding of AI and highlight emerging practices for responsible integration. Then we'll hear from Zhezhen Michael Wu of the Agency Fund, who will introduce their work developing an evaluation framework for AI in development context. Each speaker will have about 15 minutes to present. After that, we'll be joined by Jiawu Ku, the CGI's interim lead on AI, who will guide our discussion. As we go, please feel free to post your questions in the chat. We'll collect them and address as many as we can during the discussion. I've already seen some of the questions, and I can say that it's shaping up to a very engaging exchange. With that, I'll hand over to Joyce to get us started. Thank you.
So thank you so much for having me today. It's been really interesting to reflect on the journey that we've been over the past 1.5 to 2 years to integrate AI into our work at Digital Green. And I really appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit about what we've done and what we've learned with all of you. So before I actually dive into our AI journey, I wanted to briefly introduce Digital Green, what we do and why it was so important to us that AI become a part of how we operate. So since the organization was founded in 2008, we've been deeply committed to integrating technology into traditional agriculture extension systems to make them more efficient and effective. Our initial innovation was to do this through community video. So there we trained extension agents to record videos of agricultural practices that featured farmers' own experiences and their own voices. These extension agents would then facilitate interactive video screenings and discussions among farmer groups to promote adoption. And they would also help collect data on screening participation and practice adoptions. So we found this approach for many years to be very effective in standardizing the content that was shared, increasing scale, and improving adoption rates. And through this and some other methods, we've been able to reach over 8 million farmers, significantly reduce the cost per practice adoption when compared with conventional extension, and RCTs have consistently found income increases among participating farmers. So since 2008, a lot has obviously changed on the technology front, and we're able to do a lot more than video. Last fall, we launched Farmer Chat, which is an AI-enabled chatbot app that provides customized on-demand advisory directly to farmers and extension agents. So when early LLMs like ChatGPT were first released, we as an organization became really excited about their potential, but also recognized their limitations in being able to serve the farmers that we've been working with, who we thought could really benefit from this. And so we wanted to find a way to make this powerful technology work for small farmers. So with a lot of farmer and stakeholder consultation and a lot of testing, which is always ongoing, we built Farmer Chat. In this app, users can enter queries as text, audio, or photo to generate advice and recommendations that are customized for their crop, their location, and their weather conditions. And it's all in their local language. So Farmer Chat is out there and people are using it, but it is very much still a work in progress, and we're continuously collecting feedback to keep improving the product. So here's a quick snapshot of what the app looks like and a few of the more popular features. We have voice input, image diagnosis, weather updates, and market prices. I won't go into detail on these, but I will mention that farmers can provide feedback on the responses that they get, which helps us to continuously train and improve the model. So one of our aims, of course, in integrating technology into ag extension and advisory has been to make it more cost effective. When we introduced video, we were able to reduce the cost per adoption from about $35 to $3.50. And we think that Gen AI has the potential to reduce this much, much further, though we're not anywhere close to that yet. So we are tracking metrics on usage and retention, and just continuously learning about how users are experiencing the app, and gathering feedback from farmers who use and who stopped using the app. But I wanted to highlight a few findings from our early external surveys and studies, which we've conducted to try to make sure that what we're building is actually benefiting farmers and they're finding it useful. So we've been pleased to see relatively high adoption rates, with 60% of survey users reporting that they're applying all or most of the guidance that they've received from the app. When we introduced nudges or reminders, this went up to almost 80%. And remarkably, 96% of female users have reported feeling more confident when making decisions about their farms. To date, we've introduced Farmer Chat to over 250,000 farmers, or direct users, which includes farmers and extension agents. And we're working on diversifying our onboarding strategies to scale this even faster. So with all of our focus on trying to make AI work for our farmers, we also wanted to figure out how to make AI work for us and how to integrate it into our organization. In early 2024, we saw that many team members were exploring ChatGPT and other tools, but we realized there was a really broad spectrum across the organization. On the one end, we had our engineering and product team who were figuring out how to use AI to improve ag advisory. And on the other end, we had field coordinators with really limited internet access and even more limited exposure to these tools. So as an organization that tries to embrace technology and AI, we wanted to really build a culture, a dialogue, and a practice of using these tools and using them responsibly. So the main initiatives we've undertaken to build our AI capacity fall into these three categories. First, we wanted to learn. So before doing any training or any other intervention, we first did an all-staff survey to learn about current AI usage and attitudes. And then our next area of focus was to empower and encourage staff to use these tools, which we did by launching a staff-led series of short trainings on various different tools and use cases. And lastly, going beyond the trainings, which we were intended for kind of a broad and general audience, we have facilitated and supported some teams to align on more specialized AI tools. And throughout all of this, all of the encouragement we've shared with staff that they should test and explore, we also equally emphasize the need to use these tools responsibly and in compliance with all of our relevant policies, like our privacy policy and so forth. And ultimately, we want to make sure that people's work doesn't sound like ChatGPT did it for them. So before I go into a few more details on those initiatives, I wanted to first talk a little bit about who manages AI at Digital Green. So first, we have the AI Upskilling Working Group. This was a voluntary group of 5 or 6 of us who were really interested in leveling up our AI internal playing field and making sure that staff weren't getting left behind, as some people were really taking advantage of these tools. We wanted to make sure that sort of everyone felt comfortable and confident and empowered to use them. So this group was the group that led our AI surveys. We did that initial survey, which I just mentioned, as well as a follow-up survey. And this group organized all of our training series. Next, we have operations and IT, which is where I sit. And this team manages access to all of these tools. And because we manage access, we constantly get requests for new tools. And, we've been able to start engaging some of these teams on taking a more strategic approach to trying to identify and prioritize their needs. And we are slowly working on a policy. And lastly, we think everyone has some role to play in managing AI tools because it's really impossible for any individual or any team within the organization to monitor how people are using them. And so, we try to emphasize that everyone is individually responsible for learning about, to some extent, the tools that they're using, understanding the different settings that they can use, and making sure that they're using them responsibly and in compliance with our org policies. So going a little deeper into what we first learned, I wanted to share a couple takeaways from this initial survey. So first, we were excited to see really high interest in Gen AI. We had a really pretty high participation rate of over 70%. And in the responses to other questions as well, we saw a high level of interest in learning more and participating in trainings. We also saw that we had a lot of room to improve confidence in using these tools. So while most people, 77% were already using these tools in some way, more than half of them still felt like they were just at the very beginning of that journey and still felt like they were sort of novices or beginners. We also saw kind of mixed attitudes about the risks and rewards of using AI tools, where we had about 60% of staff reporting noticeable improvements in their work performance, and a similar percentage was also worried about the risks of using these tools. We also asked questions about, what people were using them for. It's a standard document drafting, brainstorming, research, analysis, coding, which I'm sure will be familiar to many of you. We did use our survey to help us prepare for the next stage of our journey. And so we used it to help gather input on topics of interest for trainings, as well as to identify some more experienced users who could actually lead those sessions. So following that survey, we organized 10 internal learning sessions. And I've listed some of those topics here. And so we call this series AI Bot Camp, which is a play on boot camp. And to make these more accessible, we kept all these sessions to just 25 to 30 minutes and tried to make them really practical and hands-on. So generally, presenters would talk about a use case for using AI, and then they would just share their screen and demonstrate how they were using the tool, and how they could iterate, and people could ask questions. So we concluded the series last fall, but all of the recordings are still available to staff on the internet. We saw these sessions as a really critical opportunity for us to remind everyone about the do's and don'ts of using AI responsibly. So we started each session with this slide, or similar set of slides featuring these do's and don'ts. I won't go through all of these, but I will say that we felt it was really important for us to have a simple, easy to understand list of do's and don'ts, which we hoped made the messages easier to sink in than maybe a more wordy policy. So since those trainings, our focus has been more on supporting teams to really optimize their use of AI. The training series by design kind of only got us so far. And as you know, tools are just emerging and evolving really quickly. So I wanted to share one example of how we're supporting a team to optimize how they're using AI, and that is with our tech team. So we were starting to see an uptick of requests for various AI tools among our tech team. There didn't seem to necessarily be a rhyme or reason. People kept requesting different tools. And so we reached out to our engineering team leaders with the list of recent requests and a request of our own for them to help prioritize which ones they really wanted to invest in for the team. So fortunately, they agreed to lead that testing and evaluation, and they then came back to us a few weeks later with a list of tools that they had selected for each stage of the software development lifecycle. So they had one tool for back-end development, one tool for front-end development, one tool for product design, and so they took that kind of approach. And this made it a lot more manageable for us to purchase the licenses. And I think it was helpful for the team to go through that process of structured evaluation together. Because I think everyone comes to that with different preferences and different exposure. And it was helpful for them to sort of agree on the tools that they were going to use as a team. And I also wanted to highlight what our comms team did as an example of internal best practice. So without any nudging from us, they also took a nice structured approach to determine how to integrate AI into their various workflows and which tools to use. So they started by defining guiding principles to ensure the use of AI was in support of our mission and values, and to give some definition to what can be done by AI versus what should and needs to be done by a human. Um, they then outlined key use cases and identified tools for each of those use cases. They have a working document that includes all the tools that they've tested, whether they're recommended or not, and they're either constantly updating that. And then with these new AI tools in place, they've also been able to go back to their old workflows and reconfigure them to be a bit more efficient. So we have definitely encountered a few bumps along our AI journey, and I'll just touch on a few of those here. So the first has been just the managing the administration and ballooning costs of a growing set of AI tools. So that's definitely been a challenge for us. The more you encourage people to use these tools, the more you may end up paying for them. And so we've tried to rein that in a bit by, encouraging teams to align on certain tools, and just really sort of limiting focus rather than having each person pick their own. And we've also been testing out and starting to use some LLM aggregators, which give access to multiple models. And we're also, always trying to leverage nonprofit discounts. Earlier on in our journey, we did keep getting requests for an approved list of tools. So we were seeing that people wanted to do the right thing, and some of them wanted more guidance. This was something we resisted, and we felt like it would be really time consuming to maintain this list. And we focused instead of reminding staff of these do's and don'ts, which apply to any and all tools that they might use. And then we also continue to emphasize this kind of individual responsibility. Um, Lastly, it's really hard to keep up with all of the tools and options that we have. They keep growing and changing. And so even those teams that have taken the structured approach to integrating AI tools, they're still periodically revisiting and reevaluating tools. A colleague of mine shared an example of a tool that they had downvoted, and then it came out with a new release and surpassed what the other tools that they were using. The other thing we're doing is trying to avoid long-term license commitments, and knowing that these tools are changing quite quickly. We don't try not to lock ourselves in for a whole year. So I'll wrap up my section with just a few reflections from our AI journey. So first, we did really feel like our training series helped us increase our use and comfort with AI tools. So in addition to just the content of the trainings, I think the mere fact that we were pushing them and making a big deal about them sent a strong message across the organization, so that even people that weren't able to attend those trainings still sort of got the message that this was a thing that we were encouraging everyone to do. And we saw some improvements in our follow-up survey in terms of how comfortable people felt and how they felt it was improving their work performance. But there's still probably work to do, and I think things will look different in a year or so. It has been really interesting to see our tech and comms teams take this structured approach to identifying where AI tools can be most effective, and where they're finding that it's paying off for them. So the comms team, for example, has been able to bring some marketing and design tasks in-house that they would have typically outsourced. And they're using tools for a number of entry-level execution type tasks. So I'm sure we're not the only organization right now feeling the pressure to do more with less. And I think we're finding that carefully selected AI tools can help to some extent. And I anticipate we'll be doing a lot more of this in the months to come. Lastly, throughout this journey, we found that I think One of the most important and simple and really pretty obvious principles to emphasize has been that when we're using these tools, human and expert judgment has to be at the beginning and the end of the process, always heavily guiding refining. And these tools can't ever be a replacement for that. So that's all I have, and I'll pass it back to you, Elliot.
I won't hold us up. If you're ready to send, you can go straight ahead.
Of course. All right. Thanks again for inviting me to this presentation. My name is Sejun Wu. I'm a behavioral scientist at the Agency Fund. So today I'm going to be talking about an AI evaluation framework for the development sector that we co-developed with our partners at Center for Global Development and also JPAL. Because I'm trained as a social psychologist, so a lot of my examples are going to be around education, but hopefully Joe is going to help me bring it back to agricultural research. Okay, quickly about the agency fund. We fund, accelerate, and help scale innovative, evidence-based ideas that expand human agency. So we have a unique funder-doer model. We find innovative organizations and award them innovation funding, and then collaborate with them and government partners to translate cutting-edge science and technology into cost-effective impact. In recent years, we've discovered that Gen AI obviously offers great promise for the development sector. It unlocks personalization, scale, and efficiency in public service delivery. And therefore, in 2024 and 2025 this year, we launched the AI for Global Development Accelerator with the Center for Global Development and also OpenAI, supporting 8 nonprofits in Africa and South Asia across different sectors, education, health, and agriculture. So Digital Green is actually one of our 8 grantees in the accelerator. And through the accelerator, we have seen the risks and the challenges of embedding Gen AI in social services. And one of the most important question or problem that I see is that everyone sort of conceives evaluation in different ways, and therefore we need new evaluation approaches tracking the technical performance of large language models alongside the assessment of real world outcomes. Therefore, we propose a 4-level evaluation framework for Gen AI in the development sector. Each level of evaluation offers distinct signals of effectiveness in different costs, timelines, and risks. And here is the blog post that we originally wrote. So moving to the framework. So there are 4 levels of questions that we need to ask iteratively when evaluating AI products in the development sector. So the first question is, does the AI behave well, which is in a stage that we call model evaluation. The second stage is called product evaluation. We ask the question, is the product used as intended? The third question we call user evaluation is, does the product positively influence users' thoughts, feelings, and actions? In the final stage, impact evaluation, we ask the question, does the product cost effectively improve development outcomes? So a small caveat here is, although we presented the diagram in a streamlined way, it is really an iterative process where you keep asking and trying to find answers for these 4 questions. And we have a very strong prior that successfully asking the questions and trying to find the evidence will lead to a good AI product development in the development sector. And another note on this framework is that these questions typically concern different types of stakeholders from the tech sector and also from academia, right? So Gen AI engineers care more about model evaluation. Product managers, data scientists, they're usually tasked to do product evaluation. User researchers, behavioral scientists, psychologists like me, we care more about user evaluation. And then economists, researchers, and policymakers care about impact evaluation. And there has been a lot of confusion around what evaluation means for each different types of stakeholder. And there's varying time, cost, and risk along this line. And our proposal is that to build and invest in better AI products, everyone needs to see beyond their own slice of the evaluation process. So in today's presentation, I'm going to talk about some of the methods around measurement and evaluation, each of these 4 levels. So hopefully it's informative for the problems that you guys are dealing with. So in level 1 model evaluation, does the AI behave well? So AI models are evaluated against benchmarks. So what I show here on the right is different AI models' performance on a set of expert level mathematics problems. And if you can see here, ChatGPT 04 mini is scoring top on the accuracy. So benchmarks are standardized evaluations used to assess the performance and the capabilities of language models across various tasks. They provide a structured and objective way to compare different models and track progress in specific areas. While these benchmarks may be useful for language models overall, they're not sufficient for our use case in the development sector. So there are three broader types of evaluation methods for model evaluation. The first type is called automatic benchmarking. So it benchmarks AI models' responses against human-generated gold standard datasets. And the second type is called human as a judge. So mainly you have human directly evaluating responses generated by AI. So there are vibe checks where you have community members giving feedback towards undisclosed prompts. And then you have systematic annotations like what you see on ChatGPT. You can do, pairwise preference ranking or Likert scale rating on metrics like accuracy. You can also provide qualitative feedback. And the third type is called model as a judge. So it means that you are creating a second language model to evaluate your main language model, right? So you need to choose a model. You need to design structured prompts and few short examples to guide this LLM judge. You need to benchmark the judge against human-labeled data for alignment. So here's where human is in the loop. You need to refine the judge by analyzing mismatches with human evaluations. And then you need to deploy the judge to assess the outputs coming from the main large language model. And engineers, especially AI engineers, have developed many of these metrics in each of these evaluation phase. So here is a common example coming from this metric called DeepEval. So if you are developing something called like a RAG chatbot, retrieval augmented generation chatbot, you will need to care about things like the RAG metrics showing here, things like answer relevancy, right? So essentially you have a human generated gold standard test set, and then you have AI generate some kind of response, and then you calculate some metric called the cosine similarity between the embeddings of each corpus of text, and then you call it answer relevancy. And engineers have also developed metrics like safety and trust metrics. It's always compared against human-labeled datasets. However, for development sector, we really need customized metrics, right? So, for example, Arman, an NGO working with us, developing like an education chatbot. They presented about their own AI bot, and they care about user friendliness and conciseness. And this is not really defined in common metrics developed by engineers. We need to find a customized data set for that. Similarly, for Jacaranda Health, doing health bot in Africa, they care about punctuation in Swahili, right? So our proposal as a funder is that we need to build these customized metrics as a community. So let me give you a few examples from this teacher social emotional learning chatbot that the agency fund is building internally, and how we created the first evaluation data set for Chat SEO, this tool. So there are four broad categories of this FAQ database. So the first type is called knowledge, FAQ around theoretical knowledge about SEO. What is SEO, for example? The second type is around the practices. So we are targeting this tool for teachers, right? So they may have questions around, should I repeat a classroom SEO game? How do I track the SEO games that I play with kids? And the third type is the personalization questions that are locally adapted to a particular context. So for example, how are the games different for kids in grade 3 versus those in grade 5? And the fourth type is the stress test, FAQs around uncommon questions that push Chat SEO to extremes. So for example, this is a comment that we got from actual teachers. These activities don't work. I'm starting to lose patience. I'm questioning my own ability as a teacher. What do I do? Help, right? So these are unexpected questions coming from the users, but we feel necessary to address. And essentially, we developed a spreadsheet with two columns. The first column is the potential questions that teachers may ask, and also the actual questions teachers ask that we think are important to include into the gold standard test. And then the second column would be the ideal answers coming from us sort of as the expert, in response to these questions and also in consultation with the teachers. And then we put this CSV file into an evaluation software. So there are a lot of choices out there. There are open source tools like LangFuse. There are paid tools like Confident AI that I'm showing here. The agency fund, we're also thinking about developing an open source tool in the development sector in partnership with Tech4Dev in India and also with ID Insight. But the general idea is that you compare AI generated response with the gold standard test and generate a visualization of how your model performs on these key metrics, such as answer relevancy here. Again, our proposal is let's build a community of evaluation databases. So hopefully those working on social emotional learning can learn from each other from their own evaluation database. So moving on to level 2 product evaluation. Is the product used as intended? So for our social emotional learning, like chat SEO, we can evaluate user engagement, a proxy for adoption or dosage using conventional randomized methods or newer machine learning methods. So for example, you can do a traditional A/B test, testing feature A versus feature B, where the features can be different types of prompting the language model or different selection of the language model, right, on user engagement through a randomized evaluation. There are a lot of metrics in the literature. I'm just going to flash the screen, but essentially there are engagement metrics surrounding like an action taken by a user, retention metrics which captures like active choice to use the platform, or non-engagement metrics around quality metrics, item level surveys, user level surveys, or user control. I want to give an example here about Duolingo. So traditionally, Duolingo is not like an AI tool, but they're sort of up their AI journey. But it is a very feature-heavy platform or tool. So not only does Duolingo care about user engagement, but they also care about something called learning engagement. They want users to learn languages, right? Internally, they have something called the Efficacy Lab, where they conduct rigorous research, standalone studies to measure the efficacy of Duolingo on learning. But these studies are not helpful in conducting A/B tests on a daily basis because they want to change their features on a daily basis based on what features and promotes a user's learning engagement, right? It's extremely important that they have a proxy metric for learning. So they thought about total sessions as a metric, but that's highly biased towards easy lessons. And they've thought about using time spent learning, which could be a good metric, but it's very skewed to studies and competitive users, right? So Duolingo users, most of them are using the main journey, like to learn through the courses, but there are a lot of other engagement features where you can gain like extra XPs. By focusing on time spent learning, they're motivating a small group of learners who are already doing more than enough, right? They're banking for the XPs. So their internal strategy is to optimize for a higher percentage of learners spending at least 15 minutes per day. And based on this mission, they developed this metric called time spent learning well, which is an addition of minutes spent learning on the main path, which is expected for 15 minutes per day, plus the penalized time spent learning on the rest of Duolingo, right? So based on this metric, they were able to conduct, a few like product changes and then A/B test for these product changes, and find positive impact of these changes on time spent learning well, right? So this is a very good example of how a metric, right, like could lead your A/B testing approach. But our question here is like, what Duolingo hasn't been able to solve is, it is using engagement features to emotionally blackmail users to use Duolingo, right? But in the development sector, this is kind of unethical to do and probably not the most effective thing to do. And for your product, for your cause area, we want to ask this question: what is an equivalent metric of healthy user engagement? And that's a great segue question towards level 3 user evaluation. Does using the product positively influence users' thoughts, feelings, and actions? So there are a lot of metrics that I can talk about here. Let me briefly introduce these. So if you're doing like an on-platform study, for example, right, there are AI session-specific trace data, things like frequency and depth of queries, changes in vocabulary and complexity of responses, and these are potentially proxies to the psychological construct that you care about. A more direct way of measuring these constructs would be to first conceptualize what is important, things like self-efficacy, grit, resilience, goal setting, so on and so forth, following some kind of psychological theory. And then you need to embrace the constraint of asking these brief survey questions that does not disrupt the main AI conversation flow, right? And then there are metrics coming from text analysis using natural language processing methods. And because AI conversation naturally generates a lot of text data, and there are ways to analyze those. I'm happy to talk more about it if there are specific questions around this. And then for off-platform studies and surveys, you'll obviously be able to do more, like measure more in both quantitative and qualitative ways. But again, like our proposal is that let's build a community of these measures so everyone can learn from each other. The example I want to give here in level 3 is about GPT-based tutors. I believe many of you may have seen this paper, Generative AI Can Harm Learning. So essentially, if we give students ChatGPT and ask them just to use it, they're probably going to use it as a crutch and simply copy answers instead of engaging substantively, right? Which is a concern that is also anecdotally raised by Kamigo's generative AI tutoring bots. So our proposal here is that, say, for example, for GPT-based tutors, we really need to understand like students' underlying psychological process of agentic learning, right? We need to measure the cognitive construct of agentic learning following some kind of theory. So for example, here the self-regulated learning theory. Essentially, we want to understand, like at each step of their learning, are they defining the task well? Are they setting their goals and planning for the goals? Are they enacting tactics to solve the problems? And are they adapting to metacognition? Are they thinking about their own thoughts, right? It may take more to move psychological outcomes. It's not just about measurement, it's also about evaluation methods, right? You can do holdout testing. You can also do like pragmatic RCTs comparing AI versus non-AI. And that's, again, like a segue towards level 4, independent impact evaluation of development outcomes. Does the product cost effectively improve development outcomes? And this is the stage where founders care more about, right? And this is the stage where, it's more costly, it's higher stake. So this is the stage where you do like randomized control trials. And let me show you an example here that Sam from JPAL gave. So the state of Espirito Santo piloted Latrue's an AI platform providing personalized essay feedback to students alongside a randomized evaluation. The evaluation found that students using Latrue's wrote more essays, received higher quality feedback, engaged more individually with teachers, and scored higher on national writing test. And given these results, Espirito Santo expanded the Latrue's statewide, and the platform is now active in 6 additional states. So these are the success stories that we wish to see, right? So with obviously, rigorous product development towards rigorous evaluation, and this leads to funding and expansion. But we also understand, randomized evaluation itself is not going to help us achieve this process because, all these 4 levels of questions around the evaluation framework are really important questions to ask and answer. So yeah, ultimately, the agency found we are dedicated to support the agency approaches, and we believe AI is a very strong agency-based approach. And we look forward to seeing more proposals through our open calls, and we look forward to support more NGOs with their own journey in generative AI. Thanks so much.
Thanks very much, Lizzie. So over to you, Joey.
Okay, great. Thanks so much for the presentation, Joyce and Susan. I mean, there is so much information, and I have my own list of questions I wanted to ask. But yeah, we also have questions coming in from audience. So yeah, I will be facilitating Q&A segment of this webinar for next maybe 20 minutes or something. So yeah, okay, let's start with a question to Joyce. Again, thanks so much for sharing this. I mean, we have been also dealing with similar requests and similar thinking, basically how we really provide all these AI tools for the benefit of our staff at multiple levels, not just research and science, but also operation side of the organization. But yeah, we often also kind of got stuck in the risk and a little bit of regulatory issues, and there are just so many choices. And as you presented, there are just many things keep changing, keep evolving all the time. So we thought we should be grounded any of these new types of tool, the use of those tools and monitoring in a way should be grounded in some kind of existing policy and the framework that our institution operates. So yeah, I was curious. I think you briefly touched on this too, Joyce. Is there some underlying policy or underlying organizational kind of framework that the use of AI tool has been added on, or was it something totally new? You had to just develop something on the fly as you move on this journey?
Yeah, I'd say it's a little bit of both. And so I think, we have organizational policies that we draw on. So we have our code of ethics, our privacy policy, data governance policy, electronic resources, acceptable use. So we have a lot of sort of relevant policies. But in terms of, I think when we started this effort, the same time that we were launching our training series, we also were working on trying to develop a policy. That policy started from our legal team, which, I think by the time it got to our CEO, it seemed like it was maybe a bit too restrictive. It was really, really focused on risk, and I think we wanted sort of, might have gone against our efforts to really encourage people to use these tools without scaring them. So we have a draft of a policy that we kind of put on pause while we just went through this whole, all of our trainings and everything. And I think it's something that we will go back to in the next couple of months is, to kind of go back and actually finalize that, drawing on all of our learnings and experience over the past year. And really, I think, having some important conversations about where we see AI playing a key role and not in our workplace.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, knowing your CEO, now I think, yeah, I can totally see that. Yeah, just let's go ahead and start doing it rather than being restricted within the, the policy framework developed predate all these tools. At the same time, Digital Green is also operating internationally, across many countries, and you have country offices in many developing countries as well. So, I mean, do you also see the cases where some of those, I guess, your own strategy might conflict, or you have to adapt to local situation, local regulations, so that it doesn't always play in kind of favor of your CEO and organization strategy, but you also have to adapt to the local reality or what needs to be governed, what information can be shared, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, we definitely do need to do a lot of adaptation to, in the countries where we operate. And so, we see it as really of paramount importance that we're protecting farmers' information and following all of the relevant country rules. So I mentioned we have a legal team, and they sort of handle all of the following and staying ahead of local laws. So before launching any new farmer chat features or before operating in any country, we make sure that we're following local privacy and data laws like India's Data Protection Bill and Kenya's Data Protection Act. In Europe, we know GDPR has strict requirements. We're not actively using farmer chat in the EU right now, but we're exploring geofencing and geo-restricting options to limit access if that's needed so that we can stay in line with those rules. And then we're also in touch with local legal advisors when we need to make sure all of our policies, data storage, and our sharing rules are in line with country standards.
Yeah, we have in the Q&A, have you conducted any surveys with farmers about how to measure the responsibility of AI tools? And if so, is it possible to share the questions with us for reference? That's for Joyce, I think.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Sunho asked, have you conducted any surveys with farmers about how to measure the responsibility of AI tools? And if so, would you be able to share them for reference?
Unfortunately, we have not done that. I think that is a great, it sounds like that is a great next step for us. I think we're thinking about, I guess when I think about users, I'm thinking about actually our internal staff, but it sounds like maybe this question is about our farmer chat users. Is that, yeah, I would say that they may not be, it's not something that we've necessarily delved into because I think it's not been the most pressing question. I think when we've been engaging farmers with farmer chat, we, I think don't expect them to know, all of their, sort of data privacy laws and things like that. So one thing that is really important for us is that we, try to make sure that when farmers are using farmer chat and we start collecting information through the app, they understand why we're collecting it, who we might share it with, and how they can contact us if they have any questions or concerns. So before people are using like a phone's camera or a microphone or a location, we ask for clear consent in the app. And those features are not switched on by default, but users can actively give permission for those. And we also do, whenever we launch new features, we take an opt-in approach so the farmers can decide if they want to opt in or not, and so that they have some choice in the matter.
Okay, and I have a question now also for Zhishan, I'm sorry. And so your name is a little bit difficult to pronounce,
Oh,
but
no worries.
forgive me. So I only recently learned about the agent fund, but I mean, I was so really happy and thrilled to learn the fund approach and its mission on scaling ideas that expand human agency. I think that really brings a lot new perspective to the table. I also appreciate that you're a behavioral scientist, really bringing new perspective to the way we are using AI tool, and we are trying to bring impact in this sector using AI tool. And this also particularly resonated with me. I was reflecting on this MIT Media Lab study recently came out saying the frequent use of Gen AI tool actually undermines brain activities, brain functions. Effectively, in a way, we are losing human agency as we are using it too much, maybe relying on it too much. So yeah, I was thinking, so I mean, this four-level evaluation framework really makes a lot of sense. But I'm also curious your thought on how we might also mitigate the risk of the over-reliance on AI tools, and also if there's any way we can measure such negative consequences. I mean, you did mention positive kind of changes, and that's what we are trying to measure and encourage. But I mean, sometimes that can be really subjective, and I was also trying to think myself how that can be measured in more productive way. And I was curious to hear from your perspective. You must have thought about this kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I think our definition of agency is always around, how that matches with personal dispositions and afforded by context, right? So like AI reliance might be like a big problem here, like in the US, but we need to try to figure out whether that's even that's the case with farmers using digital green, for example, using farmer chat, or like teachers, underwater workers using rocket learnings, AI bots, right? So yeah, it's always, as a psychologist speak, it's always a problem of thinking about agency as a moderator versus like a mediator. And I know like all human development process is sort of a moderated mediation or mediated moderation. So meaning that, a lot of the AI tools could already be, upscale the agency of people who are already agentic. And they are downgrading the agency of people who are not very agentic, right? So for example, like I was trying to like vibe coding the other day. I had no knowledge of this programming language. Spent 5 hours doing it, and I was able to build a demo for our engineer, to try it on ChatSEO, for example, right? But for someone else, it's possible that they are offloading their entire job or tasks to AI, right? And I'm not sure, if that's the case for like farmers specifically, like in low resource context. But I think, yeah, in generally, we need to, measure agency in the first place, understanding like their starting point, and see how this, changes over time throughout different measurement tools, to tailor our, responses and AI product development to their needs. And you also have a question around measurement. Yeah, again, like level 1, level 2, and level 4. These are more standardized approach, right? RCT, like many people know how to do it. Model evaluation engineers know how to do it, and they're like standardized metrics. Product evaluation, A/B test on engagement, very clear goal. But then level 3, like we were talking about psychological construct, and these are latent construct, right? These are unobserved, like things like agency, personality, emotional states. These are hard to measure, by nature. And there are a lot of different ways to capture that. I think there's also a question in the chat about this. Yeah, so there are proxies that we can look at. These conversation with AI, and you can get metrics from what people say, right? And then you can also get metrics from what people say in a context, trying to extract themes, right? So in psychology, there is a tool called LIWC, where psychologists develop like a mapping for each word, depending on the word's position in a psychological domain. For example, how independent is the word, how interdependent is the word, right? So if you say something about your family, it's probably that you're referring to interdependence, right, as a construct. And there's a way to creatively, embed that with your measurement approach, right? Trying to think about it. There's something called ecological moisture assessment. If you care about, farmers' feeling, for example, over time, it's possible to measure it frequently using a chatbot by inviting just one question like mid conversation, right? Things like that. You can also do like short surveys, 3-4 questions, maybe at the end of a chat, a conversation. But you really need to define like the core construct you want to focus on, whether it's things like efficacy or resilience, for example. And there are standardized, psychological measurements, usually tested on a population, usually more than 4 items, right, with psychometric properties. And I think the psychologist's job here is to think about, with the empirical limitations of asking just 3 questions, for example, is it possible to get enough face validity in the evidence that we get from these measurement tools? And I think we are still exploring this question. We are building like playbooks in collaboration with Center for Global Development around these measurement approaches. And hopefully this could be universally applied to agriculture, health, and also education.
I will ask the next question. This one is from Leroy. For you again, Michael. In your level 1 model evaluation framework, you mentioned creating gold standard data sets with ideal responses from experts or representative users. So Leroy works in agriculture, as the rest of us, and where we have very limited annotated textual data compared to other domains. Have you seen successful approaches for building these gold standard evaluation data sets in data scarce sectors like agriculture? And what strategies work best when domain expertise is fragmented across different types of practitioners? I think, Joyce, you may also have something interesting to say about that after you do.
Yeah. I'm not an expert in agriculture, so I'll probably defer to Joyce. We have digital green and also precision development as 2 of our grantees in the development in the accelerator. I believe they're developing great like gold standard test. But maybe Joyce, you have a more idea about what digital green is doing?
Sure, I can speak to this a little bit, a very little bit. And, I will say that we, this is something that we do, as part of developing Farmer Chat, is that we are, we want to make sure that all of the advice that is dispensed through the app is accurate and relevant. And so we do run review and feedback processes. So we do this internally. We also hire, we also contract with an external vendor that helps do this for us as well. So our team is checking real questions and answers or correcting errors and using farmers' feedback to try and improve the chatbot's advice over time. And so we're hoping, I think we're hoping that we will be able to involve a broader community of practitioners in sort of reviewing some of these responses and sort of helping us collectively improve this set of knowledge.
Okay. Yeah, actually, while we have you, Joyce, so I have another question to you. So you mentioned in one of the slides, there's a tech team kind of review the request from staff and kind of they decide and they sometimes downvote some of the tools that no longer use and like that. With that kind of, I think you are giving a lot of authority and autonomy to the tech team to make the decision. But do you also worry that might bring in the end, too many tools being used at any some point in time and a bit of fragmentation, and maybe there will be some kind of rebellious staff that are continuously using downvoted tool, etc. I mean, maybe we are still in nascent stage, but yeah, in the end, it might be a little bit difficult to govern. So yeah, I'm curious, what is kind of your threshold level of tech team to make that decision moving forward?
Yeah, I think that we really see that they're the experts on what tools are going to be most effective for them. And so it's not really up to me or, in operations to be that kind of expert. And I think we want to really have these teams engage with the tools and have that group discussion. I think this question of fragmentation that you raised, we see that happening more when we're not having those group discussions. And so when we have, for example, we have a software request form where anyone can make a request, for something that they want, and sort of it's up to us to then figure out what do we do with that. But I think really by having the team go through this process of, working together to evaluate and test these tools, they're able to come to some alignment and see, what tools are better for what purposes. And I think that that's sort of putting it in the hands of the teams has been, I think, more effective for us.
Okay, great. No, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, thanks. And going back to Zheshan, so there was a ROC. I think you did mention ROC at some point in the presentation. There's a question specifically on LLM evaluation for ROC. And how can we define the threshold based on the use cases? I don't know if there's something you can share
Yeah,
around this
that's a
topic.
great question. It's probably more subjective than objective. We use 80% as a threshold. It kind of depends on like your expectation, right? So you always want this number to be like as high as possible. But it's also possible like when you increase the accuracy, right? And then sometimes like the contextual relevancy drops. So yeah, there are a lot of parameters associated with that. But yeah, 80% is our conventional rule internally, like for chat SEO.
Okay, and just one more quick question. I think we are running out of time. Maybe the last question to either of you, Joyce and Zheshan, something around the digital divide. So how can AI overcome Africa's connectivity challenges? And I think it's not just Africa. Actually, even in the US, we do have connectivity issues in rural areas. This digital divide persists across the world, around the world. So is there something that you can share and how you have strategy to address it, on how you measure impact, or something that can, be, I guess, impactful and bring more investment to address these issues, moving forward. Yeah.
Joyce, you want to go first?
Sure. So I think our approach to this has been, and I think AI alone cannot overcome these challenges.
Mhm.
And I think our approach has been to try to make this technology as accurate and helpful as possible, and to get it as close to the people who need it as we can get. Sometimes that's, they actually have their own smartphones and they can interact with the app directly. They can get that advice. But other times that's not possible. And so we do, continue to work with extension agents and, partner with organizations that have people sort of going out and engaging those people. And so we're trying to then empower them with that information that they can then disseminate, to other farmers.
Yeah, adding on to that, there are a lot of things in terms of technology that you can do, right? In places where there's no internet connectivity whatsoever, right? You probably need to rely on phone calls where the phone call is hooked to like an AI agent, right? Or like a human reviewed AI agent. In places with low connectivity, you can probably reduce the size of your model, right? You don't always need ChatGPT 4.0 for everything, right? You can do like small non-generalist models. And also it's not just about like global north and south. Like in India, like data chief is easier to find like engineers, but in Kenya it's probably harder. So yeah, we have internal like engineering team that is trying to figure this out like through relationships and hopefully build like case studies as part of our playbooks. So hopefully you guys will get more insights from these playbooks.
Okay, great. No, that's great to hear. Yeah, thanks so much. So yeah, I will hand it over to Elliot to close off. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks so much to Zhen, Joyce, for that was a very, very interesting conversation. I think it's really important to get these kind of conversations going when everyone's trying to adopt AI. But I see what Joyce mentioned just recently is that the problems arose when we weren't talking about it. So yeah, thanks again. I just wanted in this last moment to suggest to share that the next event will be on the 18th September. We're going to take a break for August. We have two speakers from within the CGIAR discuss their work bringing ethical principles to practice in AI, specifically around the problem-oriented approach. Hopefully you can find the links to register to these events in the chat. But if you're listening later, please join via this QR code and you'll find our LinkedIn community to keep in touch. Thanks very much again to everyone who came, and see you next time.
Thanks so much. Bye.